In this episode of the EW podcast, I speak with Jay Wick. Jay is a San Diego-based therapist. He works mostly with addiction and with couples. In this episode, we focus mainly on addiction. We get into some of his observations from working with people who are struggling with addiction. We talk about his own struggle with addiction and how that led him to ultimately becoming a therapist. We touch on meditation, and we chat a little bit about the role of friends and family in the life of someone who is struggling with addiction. So I had a really good time chatting with Jay. Obviously, addiction is a massive part of the national conversation, and it can come in many forms outside of just an opiate addiction. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jay Wick. I'm here with Jay Wick. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just start us off with a little about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I could go into a long version of that or whatever, but for the most part, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am in private practice in Encinitas, California, and I specialize in couples work and kind of largely addiction. So people, all different ages, different backgrounds, whatever, but I have a significant experience in addiction and kind of in my own personal recovery in life. So
how did you get into addiction and helping people cope with that?
So I guess I struggled personally with substance abuse. So from probably my early 20s, like all the way on until I went to treatment, I turned 30 in rehab. So I was kind of at the end of the rope. I was like drinking all day, every day, putting every other substance known to man into my body. And I hit a point where I basically was just like, I literally thought I was dying. I was hallucinating. I was like having a little brief episode of like psychosis, and I drove myself to the emergency room, and the dominoes kind of fell from there afterwards. Like went to detox and treatment and all that. And then it was kind of like in treatment, I had always intended to go back to school and finish my major. I started as a business major, and so I was actually planned on going back to school. And then in treatment, I kind of was like sitting in the group setting and like watching people transform and watching like the light come on behind their eyes, and I was like, maybe I'll switch my major. And then the rest has kind of just been like a connecting of the dots. And I never knew I'd become a therapist, and that's just kind of where I've landed now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it now then?
I went to school in 2013, graduated in 2015. And then after you go to school and get your master's, there's like a process of getting like 3,000 hours and all this stuff. So you work somewhere, you get supervision. But I've been licensed for about 2 years now. So
okay.
It's just been, and I've worked in mental health before. I actually worked at a place with homeless and runaway youth down in downtown San Diego. And so even before I finished my bachelor's, I was like going into people's homes and doing kind of casework and things like that. And like just helping kids that like all around in Balboa Park area and stuff. So
what was the name of that organization?
San Diego Youth Services.
Okay.
They have a bunch of programs. They have like 15 programs or something like all throughout San Diego County, and they all do different kind of specialized things. But mine was mostly just kind of, I was like a peer support, so that they'd work with a therapist, and then I wasn't a therapist or any like trained mental health professional yet, but I was just somebody that like could relate to you, and I'm going to take you out, and we're just going to like either go like hang out at a park or go to a store or whatever. So,
cool.
Yeah.
And that's still a lot of your job, right? As a therapist, is just relating to people and understanding where they're coming from, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the primary, there's research that shows that like 75% or something of the change that happens within therapy is like largely just based on the relationship that you have. So like if you trust this person and you guys connect and you can get vulnerable and open up, then like real change is going to happen. But so, I mean, a lot of therapy is kind of like searching for that right fit too in the beginning,
Mm-hmm. And the majority of your patients or clients are suffering with addiction?
Yeah, I would say that's a good bulk of it. I also am trained in this theory for couples therapy. So I see a lot of couples it's called emotionally focused therapy, and it's based in attachment theory. I mean, I could go into all that stuff, but that is a real passion of mine. I really love seeing couples that think they're stuck, they're distressed, they're fighting all the time. And like this theory really helps kind of provide a roadmap to get out of that. So like you get to actually see people who like really want to be together, but they just can't stop fighting. And like I can help make a couple tweaks and get them out of that. So I would say at one point I wanted to make my whole practice all couples therapy. But then I kind of started realizing like taking my own recovery process and all that, like I'd be kind of doing a disservice if I wasn't trying to help others in recovery too. So,
right.
Yeah.
And are you a private practice, or are you working with treatment centers, or how do you get your clients?
Yeah. So it's, I'm, the name of my practice is called Focus Therapy. It's kind of confusing, I think, to some people now because it sounds like a treatment, but I own a photography business also. Okay. So I kind of just like a play on words. I just liked the name of it. And, but it's just me. I rent space in Encinitas at a place. And so it's kind of isolated. Like I came from working in a treatment center where you have a bunch of other people and clinicians and you're kind of like always there with everybody. And so now kind of like a large part of it is actually being like a business owner too, and like doing your own marketing and advertising and going and doing networking events and all these things to try to make genuine relationships with people so that they feel comfortable sending you somebody.
Right. What is the main substance that people are struggling with that you see? Is there something you can point your finger at, or is it a variety of things right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, opiates are obviously a huge one, and it's like really in the news. And I mean, it's pretty sensationalized because the news wants to grab onto that and be like, everyone's dying and whatever. And so, yeah, especially in North County, San Diego, there's a ton of heroin and a ton of opiate addiction. But Xanax, I think, is like another huge one that people really struggle with. And it's because it works so well. Yeah. Like if you have any slight discomfort in your life, you pop a Xanny and you feel wonderful. And that pairing alone is like really addictive psychologically, and then it becomes physically addictive. So that it's one of the more dangerous ones, and people don't realize it because everyone has a prescription for it, or your doctor just gives it to you like it's no big deal. But like once you get on it, it's the withdrawals you can have and all the things. It's actually pretty bad. Are
the majority of your patients that you see people who have developed their addiction through prescription drugs, or is it, I guess, what's the gateway that you see from the people you work with?
Right. I'm
sure it's a variety, but
yeah, it's kind of a variety, but like I would say that the common factors, or like the common denominator among everything, is just like how I conceptualize addiction is that it's just a maladaptive coping mechanism. So like you have an inability, like in a really general sense, right? Somebody has an inability to handle any form of distress or discomfort, pain, trauma, sadness, whatever. You find this thing and it works really well to help you not have to. I always kind of tell parents when they're struggling with like their kid using or something, and I'm like, it's not like your kid is out there like using to feel good all the time. They're not just like partying all the time. When it gets to a point where you're stuck in addiction, you're more using to not feel bad all the time. So like, and that's why it started. I mean, I think that's the thing of why it starts, why some people can abuse different drugs or party or do whatever. They're doing cocaine on the weekends. They come back and they go to work and do everything. And there's some people that like don't want to stop. And it just kind of plays to that there's like underlying unresolved stuff that's happening.
Is the cause of a lot of the addiction you see rooted in childhood trauma and a lived experience like that? Or is it a genetic thing too?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say for anything, right, that like it's not genetics or it's not, but from the things that I've read, even from like my own experience, I think maybe it's more likely that people have a predisposition to like say genetically you're more predisposed to having higher levels of anxiety, or within your family system, one of your members of your family had a lot of their own trauma or whatever, right? So like that family member was never able to like attune to you and validate and regulate and help you learn how to regulate yourself, right? So then you start finding strategies and using whatever tools you can. And for some people, it lands with a substance that you can put in yourself. I mean, they have a thing that's called the ACE studies, and I think it's like the Adverse Childhood Experience study. It's a big, long study, and it looks at like early childhood stress, trauma, abuse, like all these different things. But it's not just major traumas, right? Like it's just like maybe you had a parent that was unable to attend to you emotionally because they're dealing with their own stuff. And so you get repeated invalidations, or there's a little more chaos in your house than normal. Those people have a higher propensity to end up with some sort of addiction later in life than, you know, if you just had attuned parents that were always there. And like, parents are all just doing the best that they can, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't to like pathologize parents, but it's like that seems to be kind of some of the common factors, you know?
And probably how those kind of issues get perpetuated too, right? Through a bloodline or through a family, is you get a parent that doesn't know they're doing something wrong, or doesn't know that they're, you know, affecting their child negatively,
right?
Because they're dealing with their own stuff. So then you end up passing that on to the child.
Right. I mean, I think that's like, as a marriage and family therapist, my marriage and family therapists are kind of designed to look at things systemically, like based in relationships, but also like in larger systems and cultures and society and belief systems, whatever, right? So I can look at things that's how I look a lot of times at like family, is just like, well, we go back and we trace the lineage, and like I'm not looking at genetics or what biological thing. Yeah, that's a component, but if mom and dad had an abusive childhood or had addiction or whatever in their family, I'm not necessarily saying it's like genetic. I'm going, you saw this in your family. It caused chaos in your life when you were a child. You felt scared or unsafe or uncertain all the time. You learn a strategy based on the strategies that the people around you have been using, right? Like if your family members are normalizing coping with a substance, then you're going to in turn probably turn to it a lot quicker than somebody else who was like, a problem pops off and mom and dad are like, yes, this is stressful, but we got it, you know, we'll handle it. Or you have like mom crying in the room somewhere, popping pills. You're like, I guess that's how you solve your problems, you know? Yeah. And then it just continues to pass down. So it's not like you said, like, again, this guy that I used to work with always used to say, like, one of his taglines, everybody's doing the best that they can with the information they have available, right? So every parent is doing the best that they can with whatever life threw at them. Mm-hmm. And if you have overwhelming things in your life and in your psychology, like it's going to be real hard to attend to yourself and a newborn or a child or whatever else at the same time. So it's not purposeful. It's not like somebody's trying to like mess up their kid, but it ends up getting passed down. So that's why it's like, it's really important to have accountability, acknowledge your own stuff if you're capable, and like just be vulnerable and willing enough to try to do some work, you know?
Mm-hmm. How much of your time with your patients is spent going back through history and trying to pinpoint traumas or issues versus talking about day-to-day struggles?
I think I would say most of my work is like present day, present moment stuff. So I can even take things in a session and see somebody's getting irritated or dysregulated or something and talk about like, okay, let's talk about what's going on with that. And then maybe we can connect it to some other things, right? Or I do a lot of stuff based in attachment, which is set kind of by the relationships and the structure that you have with your family, or your family of origin, right? You're gonna say something?
I was just going to say, could you get into attachment theory? I know you mentioned that before and I've heard it, but I can't remember.
So it's like one of the bigger theories in psychology. There's tons and tons of research behind it. So I'm trying to figure out, I actually have a blog that I wrote a bunch of stuff about it, but it basically comes down to that as mammals as like biological, we're seeking connection, right? We're primed and wired for connection because it helps our survival. I mean, evolutionary as we pass, like if we're able to connect with other beings, we're going to have a better chance of surviving and moving on, right? So and there's all this research now that shows that like these connections, safe connections, actually like regulate your nervous system and make you feel better, and there's all these benefits to it, right? So if you've had experiences in your life where like you're going to, like, say within your childhood, right? Like you're going towards these connections, or you want the people that are supposed to be the ones that are trying to keep you the safest and provide for you, nurture you, all of that. If those people are unable to, you start to kind of learn different strategies to get your needs met. And so some people, there's like 3 basic styles, like secure, anxious, avoidant. And then there's one that's disorganized, which is like, they call it like a come here, stay away, because you're like, you want to be close to people. And then when you get close to people, that people are the source of a lot of your hurt and pain and whatever. So you get flooded with anxiety and then you run away. So you see it a lot with like adults in relationships where they're like, I want to be in a relationship. And then the second that somebody gets too close, they're like, peace out, I'm gone. So anyway, like a lot of that stuff forms in childhood. And then it's all about like having co-regulation, right? Like a parent is there, they see that you're distressed, they attend to your needs, they come, they comfort you, they take care of you. If you don't have a parent that does that, you have to start learning how to either get the parent's attention. So you're either trying to be the person that's pleasing all the time, or am I good enough? Am I good enough? Right? Or the avoidant style person is like the one that's just like, you're not really ever going to be available to meet my needs. So I'm just going to kind of be in the corner over here doing my own thing. And they're not really like responsive. And I hope that's kind of a decent summary.
That makes sense. I, whenever you were talking about it, my memory was jogged about where I heard it from. My therapist actually was mentioning it to me once. And she was saying that in World War II, I think they did a study of kids that were orphaned or something, and found
like in Romania,
and that they were dying way earlier without any attention.
Right. So that's like where they used to think that like there was a school of thought for a while. It was like, if your kid's crying, like let them cry, like, you know, don't attend to them, whatever. And kids you don't really necessarily need like all this nurturing and attention. And then that study with the Romanian orphanages was basically showing that like neurologically and biologically, they're not actually developing without getting that nurturing touch and that closeness from another person. So it's like, it's imperative that we have healthy, safe connections. And if we don't get those, it's called failure to thrive. And so you like actually don't grow.
And so some of the people that fall into addiction and are struggling with it, they might, just to kind of paraphrase what you're saying, they might have tendencies or something that are immature, for lack of a better word, or not fully developed. Does that make sense?
I don't know the word immature. Like, I don't want to put like immature on anybody. You know what I mean? But
I guess what I mean is, when I think about my own experience, and whenever I was depressed, maybe I'd be confronted with adversity or a certain thing, and I wouldn't be able to deal with it because of the anxiety, or
you just shut down or something.
Sometimes it would feel like I had almost reverted back to a younger self or something. Do you find that to be true with people who are struggling with addiction as well? That they are maybe in some ways, you know, caught in some loop of...
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Like, I mean, well, there's 2 things, because there's another thing where they call like arrested development, right? Which is like, not just the TV show, but there's a common kind of ideology that you kind of stay at the age where you first started using. So a lot of people are actually kind of immature when they, like, if they started using drugs at 15, then you kind of don't progress past that throughout your use, right? But I hear what you're saying is like, you kind of like, if you haven't had that nurturing or that consistent person or whatever, then when you hit your own adversity in life, like you don't have sort of like adult mature ways of handling the things. You kind of just like hit a wall and shut it down. And
exactly.
Yeah. And I think so, like attachment kind of points to a lot of that too, is that the more secure of an attachment people have, the research actually shows that they are more kind of independent and free in the world. Cause you have this, they call it a, like a safe haven. I'm going to mess it up, but where you kind of have a mental image in your head of like, okay, I've got people in the world that have my back and they care for me and they'd be there and whatever. And so you're like, I'm willing, I can go out into the world and explore, right? Where if you don't have that and you're like always uncertain, it's just kind of this space where you're like timid and afraid to, and you kind of get left with an imprint of like, not good enough, not capable, not, so you, like you're saying, like you get hit with some adversity and it's just like, I don't know. I don't have the model in my head to be like, I'm going to overcome this. We're going to get through. You didn't have people that were around you saying like, hey, stressful times happen. Like, we got this. You're just like, it's all doom and gloom. I'll never get through this. Yeah. And there's actually research on, there's like fight, flight, and freeze, you know, like the fight or flight, when people get stressed or when people get in danger, but there's the freeze thing too, or like the immobilization, which is, there's research around developmental trauma, which is like the early life attachment stuff, that some people's strategy is that immobilized freeze, where you're locked up. Like you don't even know why. You're just like, I'm going to go sleep for like 5 days, you know? So a lot of that stuff can be explained by like a lot of this developmental trauma stuff.
Where are people on the spectrum of their addiction when they come to you? Are they look like on their way out? Do they have a foot out the door and are looking to get better, or are you getting people at their ultimate lows?
I usually, so being a therapist in private practice, where I'm usually, the frequency of how I see people is usually once a week. You know, sometimes I'll do a couple sessions a week or something, but so usually they've gone through a detox, through a treatment. Maybe they're still in outpatient. Maybe they couldn't go to outpatient. Cause like kind of the level of cares as it goes is like, you usually need some form of detox if you've been hooked on something for a really long time. So they'll medically bring you down safely. And then you'll go to like a 30-day inpatient maybe, where you like live there, you know? Right. And then usually what they want you to do is go to an outpatient where they'll step you down from like 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 1 day, whatever. And the progression is you're supposed to kind of start like becoming more independent. And so I'm usually in that frame somewhere where like either they went to outpatient and now they're referring them to go to a therapist to continue their work, or they couldn't go to outpatient because maybe it's too much money or whatever. So, and then I work with a lot of people who have been in recovery for a long time, but they're kind of like stuck, or they've been in AA for a really long time and they're kind of trying to figure out, do I still vibe with this? Do I believe I have a disease? Do I believe it's a spiritual problem? Do I, you know, cause, that's a big struggle for a lot of people. And my own personal recovery was like about a year of AA. And then the last 9 years almost, I haven't gone to a single meeting. I just kind of work on my own stuff. So I feel like I can like speak to all of it. I can help you if you're going into, if you want to talk program and 12 steps and whatever, I've lived it, I've done it, I can be there. And if you want to think about some other avenues and some other ideas, I can go there too. And then I also have like, there's a model called like harm reduction, where it's just like, you're not really ready to stop anything. If I deem that it's unsafe or medical necessity says that you need to go somewhere, right? But if you're still trying to drink or you're still trying to like smoke a bunch of weed, I don't really have a problem with that. I'm going to help you get to a point maybe where you see how it's been causing problems in your life, but I'm not the type of person to be like punitive about it or be like, you know, you need to be abstinent only to come see me. I'm just going to be like, I think through my own experience, I'm able to take a step back and kind of just be like, you make some mistakes and bump your head a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how that maybe your substance use played into that, you know?
Right. Is marijuana still considered a gateway drug?
I would say like a bunch of old models of thinking probably still think that. And I've been like watching all this, reading reports lately about how like, it's just like politicized. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's all this stuff now where they're saying like it causes psychosis, and they've always kind of like been in that realm or wanting to pin marijuana as like a thing that causes psychosis. And then like nobody could really actually pin to it. They were like, maybe you have an underlying condition that like marijuana might be flipping a switch genetically, right? If you're smoking like a ton, like all day, every day, or like maybe you have a propensity for smoking higher levels of marijuana because you already are dealing with something. But now because that didn't work, they're like, well, the higher content THC marijuana is what's really doing it. And now people can get it easy. So it's just a polarizing, like, it's still a drug in a lot of people's eyes. And to me personally, I think alcohol's far worse than anything, really. Like, it's a legit poison. Like, it ravages your body, and it causes people to do crazy shit where they're like hurting their family members and drinking and driving and what, you know, and like, we're still like, anybody that I talk to that I say I don't drink, they're like, what do you mean? Like, wow.
Is the legality of things like alcohol and marijuana, do you find that that's a challenge when trying to get people to stick to their sobriety? I mean, I guess that's saying it out loud kind of sounds like a stupid question, but in your experience, is that a major issue in helping people get sober?
Yeah. Well, like, before marijuana got legalized, especially here in California, right? Like, I don't think it was ever a question. Alcohol was like the main one where it was like, you can buy it at any street corner, you can do whatever, right? So it's kind of one of the harder ones to stop, because if it's like, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Like, if you're going and buying heroin off a drug dealer, like, everybody kind of has conceptualized in their mind that that's like a bad thing to do. Like, probably shouldn't be sticking a needle in your arm and going and copping drugs off some drug dealer somewhere. But everyone and their mother drinks alcohol. And when you have like a parent or somebody that like people are like, so like, you might drink again one day, right? And you're trying to wrestle with this idea of like, I'm supposed to be abstinent forever, you know, like, I think it's a big deal. And now that's kind of becoming the same thing with weed, where people are like, well, I just smoke a little bit of weed. And then when you find out, it's like, well, you're smoking all day, every day. Like, if you're managing to function in your life and do stuff and be productive, great. But like, if you're just using it to escape and zone out all day, every day, it's a problem. And now that you can like go buy it legally and, you know, smoke it anywhere, that I think it just adds I don't know. The biggest challenge always to me personally is just accountability. Can you look at what's happening in your life and see that there's problems and that things continue? Like, the lessons keep coming on repeat, right? Like, you keep getting injured, or you keep losing jobs, or you keep whatever. So like, look to the common things, and then are you willing to be accountable and go, okay, I want to give these things up so that I can have a better, more productive life, you know?
Are people generally pretty receptive to that whenever they're seeing you, or?
No.
No.
People do not like having things like taken away from them, right? I learned from another counselor, and this is just kind of how it has been for me. Like, I take a more empowered approach to it and go, this is a choice, right? So every day I get up, I make the choice to not drink alcohol or consume a bunch of other substances, because it has caused a bunch of problems in my life. I know where it goes, right? But for me to have that space of going, this is my choice, is a lot different than having somebody go, you can't do this ever again. Mm-hmm. Like, because most people are going to go, fuck you. I'll show you. I can, you know? So I hope I can cuss on this.
yeah, for sure.
Normally I'm dropping a lot more F-bombs, but yeah. So like, that's just, there's a tool in addiction recovery called motivational interviewing. And like, a lot of it is just meeting clients where they're at, not really like challenging them, not like where they're at emotionally, or like in their stages.
I thought you
of
meant
change.
at like a bar.
Like, yeah, no, it's like literally, I saw your eyes go like if this person is like, I don't want to stop, I don't challenge it, I don't tell them why they're wrong, I don't whatever, I just kind of like continue to bringing up questions, continue like highlighting areas of their life that have had problems because of this, whatever, but I'm not really sitting there like, you need to do this, you know? And it kind of helps people come to their own conclusions more than just like where a lot of other places are like, you have a problem, this is why you need to stop, you know? So
how much of your own experience are you using? Are you pulling that in whenever you're seeing your therapist or your clients and talking about how you struggled with your substance abuse and talking about your road to sobriety as well?
Yeah, I think I am very transparent as a therapist. So like, a lot of what you're taught in school is kind of like, don't share a lot of stuff, don't express, but like, I kind of just want to show up as real as I can be and be me. I mean, like, I wear t-shirt and like, this is what I'm wearing right now, like jeans, white t-shirt and Converse is like what I wear to some sessions, you know what I mean? And but like, I have the knowledge, I have the background, so I can be professional and show up that way, but I'm also going to kind of share with you what I learned from my own experience and how I applied that. So I can take my own personal experience and I can apply it to like the theories and the models that I've learned and be like, this is why this works. Like I've seen it, you know what I mean? And I think people just relate more to the fact that it's not somebody that just learned everything from a textbook and now I'm just like, change your life. You know, I'm like, dude, I lived this. I don't ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done or I'm not willing to do in my own life. And like, I'm still 9.5 years in, like actively trying to like work on my own anxiety and social phobias and get over fears. And you know what I mean? So I'm not sitting in a room just like on high telling people what to do. And then in real life, I'm like hiding in the corner somewhere. And
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Let me open up my notebook here.
It's all good.
Real quick.
I was impressed. I was like, man, you got a lot of questions. You're on it.
I was studying up a little bit today, trying to get ready for this. I was actually watching Gabor Mate, I think his name is. Chodsko put me onto him. And one of the things you said reminded me of something he says, which is like, don't ask why the addiction, why the pain.
Right.
And sounds like that's exactly what you're in the lane you are.
I like his all of the kind of newer schools of thought around addiction are like this, like you're treating yourself and your pain with this thing and you found it, right? It's the same thing with somebody who's eating compulsively or they're gambling or they're shopping or whatever. They're seeking an outward escape from something because they don't know how to just sit with whatever pain or discomfort or whatever they're in, right? And then it continues to spiral and it continues to get worse. But if you sit with somebody and look at them and just look at the pain that they're in versus like this like moral high ground where you're just like, you're a drug addict and like, why don't you just stop? You know, like that's what people's parents are doing to them and it's not working, you know? So
that was one thing I did want to ask you about was in your other settings where they're not dealing with substance abuse, where it's maybe a couple, are you seeing similar patterns of behavior in terms of like cell phone usage and social media addiction? Can you see like parallels between the two, or is that something you're not even
like how much of an impact like social media and cell phones and stuff are having on people?
Right. And if it's having similar effects, like I've talked to some people who say that, you know, anxiety is a huge thing that is kind of related to social media, over using social media. And that's also, I mean, you could also say the same thing, like we're going with not having drugs or your withdrawals is kind of a similar feeling, right? Or
I mean,
do you see parallels there at all?
No, I think people have used their phones and their social media and whatever as another form of just an escape. Like you can escape into Instagram for 2 hours and get completely lost and not have to feel the thing you're feeling. Or if you're in like a relational setting, like, right, you're in a relationship that you're unhappy with, you have a real good excuse to just not connect with your partner or talk about the problems, right? Like in order to like fix something, we have to get vulnerable and talk about the problems. And it's going to be really uncomfortable for both of us. And we may have to admit to some fault of our own or whatever, or I could just ignore the problem and just like look in my phone. And then it continues to cause other problems too, where people are like, why isn't that my life? And then they just get kind of like disheartened with the whole world around them and just feel kind of like, I'm watching some influencer go on vacation after vacation after vacation. And I'm like, well, that should be easy enough. Like that should be my life too. Right. Yeah. Like nobody wants to work anymore or like try hard. Like, it's just like, I'll just get famous.
Is social media an issue you see with couples that you see? Is that something that is causing friction in between couples that you see? Yeah,
I see it with, the way that it can cause, I mean, just down to the level of like, you have a partner that's liking somebody else's pictures, or they're looking at accounts that have women in them, or vice versa, right? Or the fact that literally there is no more connection anymore between the couple and they're just staring at their phones or staring at right? I mean, it's just kind of, it's definitely a thing. And I think it's a generational thing now too. Like it's more, I don't know. I look at my phone a lot. Like same. My girlfriend looks at her phone a lot. But like we try to make time to connect, but it's different. If you're comparing it and contrasting it to like a generation where we didn't all have smartphones in our pockets, like you had to do other things, but you probably were getting lost in other stuff too, you know,
Right.
or like you're becoming a workaholic and you're not connecting with your wife on that sense, or, you know, people just find the easiest kind of immediate thing to get themselves out of whatever discomfort they're in. And right now we have a thing in our pocket all the time that's just, if we're standing in a circle of people and it's like there's a slight pause and everyone just pulls out their phone because it soothes you. It helps break the tension instead of just being like, I can feel uncomfortable in this moment and like just stare at each other, you know?
Yeah, for sure. What kind of things do you recommend or are you making recommendations to people for certain life changes and ways to fill that emptiness? Or is it more so just a discovery process with you?
I do make suggestion. I work like collaboratively. So it's, I'm not a person that thinks of myself as the expert about your life. I have expertise in areas, right? And I bring that in to like highlight things and stuff, but like, you know, your life and what's best for your life. And so hopefully we get to a place. That's why I like bringing it back to like, that's why the relationship between the two people is important, because hopefully you feel comfortable enough with me to be like, I don't like that, or this is what I think I need. And then we create goals based on that. So I kind of try to work with people based on what they tell me they need and what they want. And obviously if they're like, I want to keep using heroin, I'm like, well, this probably isn't the best fit for you. You know what I mean? But I do, like, in terms of people that are trying to get over addictions or trying new things, like I am going to make a bunch of suggestions, or I'm going to go, why don't you try this? Or have you thought about this? I think hands down, one of my things across the board is mindfulness, like meditation. And I try really hard to break the kind of spiritual connotation with it, which is a great component. But like for me in this setting, it's just kind of like you're literally just sitting and you're just minding your breathing. And when you notice you've started thinking about something else, you come back to your breathing. And that translates over to so many more things in life, because I mean, 99% of the people I talk to are like, you know, I just have these racing thoughts all the time and whatever. I'm like, there's a way to not grab onto all your thoughts and follow them and believe that they're all real. Like, you just need to learn how to settle yourself, you know?
How do you get people into meditation? Is there a certain app or a tool you recommend? Or
I personally, so it was something that actually really changed my life, and I was really resistant to it because I'm not a religious person, or I wasn't a spiritual person. And so I was like, meditation is for like monks, and you know what I mean? Or you're like trying to reach enlightenment. And then when I started reading like the neuroscience behind it and the actual science of what it does to your physiology and how it changes your brain, then it helped me a little more to be like, okay, when I'm sitting here for 10 to 15 minutes doing nothing, quote unquote, it's actually doing a lot for me, right? So I try to break down the science for people who are hesitant, and then I just tell them, like, just start. Like, all you got to do is just start. And I usually use 3 different kind of breathing techniques and techniques that I've used for myself. But I really stress, like, you're not trying to stop thinking. It's impossible. You're trying to notice when you've drifted away, and then just come back to the present moment. And all you're doing is strengthening that space. I'm lost in thought. I'm back to the present moment. I'm lost in thought. I'm back. Right. So there's apps. I actually have a biofeedback machine that I use.
Oh, cool.
It's like a program made by this company called Heart Math. And so it shows you, like, I'll hook people up to it. It's a little sensor on your ear, and it measures like the beat in between like your heart. So it's like your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system are kind of constantly constricting and expanding or whatever. Right. And this thing, you can, as I teach people, okay, fall into this breathing, think about gratitude, picture your heart, whatever, you can see the line on the thing getting real smooth and kind of like, it shows you that you're in what they call coherence. And then I tell people, now think about something that really stresses you out, and they can watch in real time the thing get really jagged and get all over the place. And then I go, now go back to what I just taught you. And they watch themselves bring themselves back into like a more relaxed physiology. And so I find like even if I do that once with somebody, they're like, okay, I could go practice this outside of here because I actually saw it doing something versus just go try to breathe somewhere, you know?
It makes it tangible,
right?
For sure.
And you're like, oh shit, I just did something. Like, and that's everything in your life. Your mom's yelling at you, your boss is whatever, you're stressed out about taxes, all these other things. You have the ability to actually stop following all those crazy catastrophic thoughts and just come back to here and now, pleasant, peaceful, you know?
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with Sam Harris.
I don't know.
No?
Maybe I have.
You would love him. You should check him out. He's a neuroscientist and philosopher who, his whole thing is making the spirituality side of things like meditation more acceptable among like the scientific community. It's really cool. He's actually got an app called Waking Up that I have been using to help me meditate, and it is, it's really cool.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that like what you're saying, so I was really against the spiritual piece of all of these things and not raised religious, and then going into a program like AA where they're like, you have a spiritual problem, you need to find a God. And I was like, it doesn't fit. I mean, I'm willing to try to jump in and do it because I don't want to die, right? But like, it still doesn't feel right for me. And so I was really like pushing against it. And then as I've gotten more along my journey, I've really gotten into a different spiritual place where like I have some what people like the wooey kind of like I really believe your thoughts create your reality, create everything, right? You have to get your thoughts right and you can manifest those things into reality, and half of like how you do that is by getting in this grounded, centered space through meditation. If you're just all over the place, nothing's going to come to fruition because you're just like scattered and nothing's concrete out there, you know?
Are you, whenever you're dealing with people in their addiction, are you also dealing with their family members directly? Are you helping them navigate the process, or is it just more one-on-one relationship?
It's always like just kind of what presents itself, right? So like the way that I conceptualize all of it though too is that you can't really remove it from the family, because like if you have a guy come in at the treatment center I used to work at, you have somebody come in, guy or girl, they're doing great work in the treatment setting, they're healing, they're feeling better, they feel safe, all this other stuff, right? And then like you watch when you go, so I have a family session scheduled this week and your mom and dad and whatever are going to come in and they just spin out of control. And because like you can't take it out. Like family members go, this is like the common thing, right? Once you're fixed, all of our problems will be better, right? But how I'm looking at it is this person's problems and your problems are all created in the same context and you're all one part of the same system, right? So even if dad's just never present because he's working all the time and he's not really doing anything major to you, that trickles down to mom who's not getting attention, who trickles down to how she overly attunes to you or criticizes everything, whatever, right? And so it's just this big circle, and parents see the chaos and all the stuff in their lives as like, you're the one that's doing it, because it's easy to look at the outward thing as, well, you're abusing drugs, you're doing whatever, you're the problem, so let's fix you. But you have to look at, why did the problem start in the first place? And it's not always just like the family, right? But it's not to be like, once you get sober, our whole lives will be better and everything will change. Like you need to learn how to have healthy boundaries. You need to learn how to talk to each other, right? You need to learn how to not stigmatize this person. Like you said, like Gabor Mate, like look at them as somebody that was in pain and they're struggling and they're not going to be fixed overnight. Like this is a process that's going to continue for a long time. So are you going to show up as supportive, or are you just going to continue drinking yourself and thinking you don't have a problem and then being mad when your kid won't stop, you know, like you're the problem. Well, you drink every day too. You're just the adult. And so you're, you know? Yeah.
What kind of recommendations do you have for people who are dealing with someone that's struggling with an addiction? Because like you said, you don't want to point the finger at them and point the finger at their addiction itself, I guess, and say, like you said, stop being an addict or whatever.
Right.
What's the most productive way for a family member or a friend to deal with someone who's struggling with addiction?
Love.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like, so that's like a really like, just love them. You know what I mean? Like, but one of the things that I always tell parents or family members as you're going through this thing is the thing that's going to help you the most right now in this, because it's a really back and forth, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Like it's a real challenging, can be a long process, right? You need to learn how to manage your own anxiety. The family members, right? Let them do their work, whatever, but your anxiety about the future, about what may happen to them, about where they are, about whatever is causing you to behave in ways that create control or that create defensiveness in them, and they pull away more, right? So you need to like learn how to manage your own stuff and then set super healthy, concrete boundaries. So it's fair and totally acceptable for you to say, you can't live here anymore. Mm-hmm. And you can still do that from a place of, I love you. Like, you are my son. I love you more than anything in the world. It's killing me to see this, but if you're not ready, I see whatever, like, so, but you're not allowed to live in this house. Right. And if that means like, you're going to be like those boundaries, that creating discomfort oftentimes leads to somebody to have to make some change, right? But it's the hardest thing for people to do because they look at it like, I'm kicking my kid out, like right. My kid is going to die on the streets. And it's like, you're letting your kid die in your own house right now, you know? It's not love what you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's for you to manage your own anxiety so that you can keep a closer eye on them, but you're also making a comfortable place for them to continue to get high and use. Mm-hmm. So
how many of the people you see have had a situation like that where it's kind of like an end of the road, like your parents kick you out or you get fired? Is it usually some sort of life, like catalyst in life that brings them to see you?
Yeah.
Some sort of major event?
I think unfortunately with the nature of addiction is there's a saying, and I'm going to probably butcher it, but the pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of changing or something like that in order for change to happen, right? So I think I was saying it right. The pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of changing, because mm-hmm. change is uncomfortable. It's painful. It's really hard to give up this thing and be without your main coping mechanism for a super long time, right? And you're going to have to figure out how to navigate life without it. You're going to be super uncomfortable. So people try because they know that they have a problem or they know something's happening. And then it starts to get a little bit better and they're like, it wasn't that bad. And then they go back and then it gets worse and worse, right? And so it's this kind of that rock bottom place where it's like a really unfortunate thing that people have to hit a scary place or a rock bottom in order to really give up the one thing in life that makes them feel like they're able to like manage the world, you know, mm-hmm. in whatever sense. So yeah, I mean, like a lot of times, and that's the other thing too, is like, I'll watch people change. I'll watch people come to treatment and like, maybe it's their first time and nothing super major happened in their life, but like it got to a pretty bad, scary place, right? Mm-hmm. They get a little healthy. They feel like that was just a fluke and they start doing what they were doing slowly. And then it ramps up into like a lot worse. And then the next time, we had people that would come through treatment a few different times, right? The next time it was like, I got arrested. I did some time. The next time it's like, you know, I stole all my parents' shit and pawned it, you know, something that I would never do in my life, but like, that's just the progression. Mm-hmm. And now you're running from the shame and the pain and all that other stuff. Like, so it just kind of perpetuates it. Yeah. In your practice or your experience, is medication helpful with dealing with addiction? Yeah. I mean, it depends on the situation. Like, so there's a lot of research now on like medically assisted treatment with like opiates. They want to help people get on like Suboxone or things like that, right? So if you're having trouble staying off of some heroin or some other opiate to the point where you've overdosed a bunch of times and you like can't do it, then going on this mild dose of Suboxone seems like a great choice, right? The research points to you're not going to die of an overdose if you just have a maintenance with this, right? But like or like if somebody has clinical depression, right? Like, great, get on an antidepressant. See what it does for you. You may not have to stay on it for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. It may help you get out of bed in the morning and start putting one foot in front of the other, and then you carry that momentum. If somebody's bipolar, like 100%, you need to get on some sort of medication so that you can manage that mania that's going to come out and cause a whole host of other problems, right? But other than that, like, I really think like a lot of substance abuse work is just really like learning how to be uncomfortable for a while. And then each time that you go through like a certain, like your brain's telling you whatever presents you, like even me coming down to be like on a podcast, there's like still pieces of my brain that's like, this is scary. You've never met this person, you know what I mean? And then there's like a space where I know that my brain just tells me a bunch of scary stuff because that's how I'm wired. And so, and I've been through enough of experiences like this now to where I'm like, it's going to be great. Right. Mm-hmm. But early in recovery, everything seems like you're just like an exposed nerve. And so you have to really learn what they call just like building distress tolerance. Like you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. But so far, every time even the minor little thing has happened, you've ran and turned to the substance to help you feel a little bit better, you know?
So are people dealing with self-esteem and like low confidence issues that you see during addiction? Yeah.
Yeah. I think like low self-worth, whether it's an initial, like that was something that kind of led to it in the beginning, or it's now, no matter what, if you're deep into addiction, substance abuse, even binge eating or gambling or shopping, right? Like there's a high level of shame that comes with it too, because you kind of like, you know, you don't want to be doing what you're doing. Like there's a point where, at least for me, but I think people could speak to this too, is that like, where they're like, you know, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. And it's like, when you're that far into an addiction, you know you have a problem. Like it's a horrible thing and you don't want to be doing it anymore. And every day you wake up and think like, how the fuck do I get out of this? And then you get uncomfortable. And so you need to do what you need to do. And then you feel good and time passes. Then you wake up. Like for me personally, I would wake up the next morning at like 7 a.m. with crippling anxiety, like crawling out of my skin. And I'd start drinking because that's the thing I knew. And every night I'd go to bed and be like, dude, I used to sit in front of the TV and watch Intervention when I'd get home from work. Like I'd go, I worked at a bar. I'd get Taco Bell on the way home. I'd sit in front of the TV and watch Intervention and I'd just cry. Because I was like, watching these people do what I wanted to do. And like part of me was like really like overjoyed and happy for them. And part of me was like scared for myself. Like, how are you going to get out of this? You know?
What started you down your path of addiction?
And I think I had pretty low self-worth. It's really weird because I've always struggled with a lot of anxiety. And like, it's weird because I was in plays and stuff as a kid. And like, I even was like the lead in a few plays and I could like go be the center of attention on that level. But like when it came to like, even still to this day, when I go to these networking things or whatever, I feel like I'm like that person back in high school where like everyone has somebody to talk to. And I'm like awkwardly standing on the side, like, oh God, how do I connect? And I think that was like drinking for me was like big because it helped me just like not give a shit and loosen up. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, I think it was just kind of partying to an excess. Mm-hmm. And then it really became a thing that I needed to do to feel comfortable overall. I was really lost and purposeless in life. So like, I think 99% of my time was worried about like, what am I going to do in the future? And like, and I just had this doom and gloom, like nothing's ever going to be okay, mm-hmm. you know? So it just masked a lot of that stuff all the time with something else that I could go on and on, but yeah. I didn't really like myself. And I think I thought I did, but like, I also was just so not confident, mm-hmm. scared of everyone, everything. Like I never went on a date. Like I had a girlfriend for like 5 years when I was younger. And then like towards my addiction, it got pretty bad. And so she broke up, or we broke up. And then for like the next 10 years, I never even like asked a girl on a date. I would like get drunk and like hook up with somebody at like a party or something, mm-hmm. whatever. But until I got sober was like the first time that I ever actually put myself out to like ask somebody out on a date. Cause I think up until that point, I was just so like 100% convinced they're going to reject you. Like, why would anybody want to date, Mm-hmm. So I think, in a roundabout way, that points to like how low the self-worth was in there,
As you were struggling with your addiction and you said, you're watching Intervention and wanting what they have, are you asking for anybody for help or are you kind of silently struggling?
Yeah, it was definitely a silent struggle. Because like you're you don't want people, or I mean, I'll say for me, I didn't want people to know how bad it really was. Like I remember showing up to lunch with some buddies one time, like in the middle of the day. And like, I had a buddy look at me and was like, have you been drinking already? And I was like, no, like what?
Yeah.
But like, they could obviously smell like whiskey coming off of me, you know? And that was towards when I was getting real bad. But like, I didn't want my parents to know. I was 29 years old, still living in my parents' house. I'd like drink all their booze and then I'd try to like replace it the next day, you know? And like, you don't want people to know, because if they know, they're going to confront you or there's going to be a big blow up. But at the same time, you like don't want to be a part, like I don't want it to be happening anymore. But I think also if anybody, like I had several people over the years confront me, and when they do, the way in which they confront created like a defensiveness. And so I'd be like, well, fuck you. You drink too, you party too, you know, instead of being able to be like, I hear what you're saying, you know? So, I mean, it kind of goes back to like when I was saying like love is the answer. Like there's a space where you can just be like, hey dude, I know you're struggling. Like, what do you need? Can I do anything for you? And I'm not judging you. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I just see you struggling. And if you need anything, right. Versus like change your fucking life or you know, it's like, so, but yeah, I definitely, I didn't ask. I think the one thing that like I still remember to this day, and I don't know if it was, I could be like real, like romanticize it and be like dramatic and say that this was like the defining moment, but I worked at a restaurant. I'd worked there for like 10 years. I'm sweeping up the bar one night. I think I had gone through a period. I think I had got a DUI. No, the DUI was probably like way before that, but something happened where I had tried to stop for a period and I realized like I couldn't stop. And this manager who worked there was this really cute girl. She's younger than me. I had been a manager at the restaurant and I had got demoted, and it was just like shameful. And this girl, I'm like looking at her like, she's like got her whole life ahead of her and she's cute. She's a manager. Like I'm never going to get anybody like that in my life because my life's falling apart. And like I started crying as I was like sweeping the floors, and she came up and was like, what's going on? And I think I looked at her and was just like, I'm an alcoholic and like I don't know how to fix this problem. And I think that was the first time I actually like said it out loud in a way that like before I had been like, I'm an alcoholic, like fuck yeah,
almost
party,
funny
like
thing,
everyone I know is alcoholics, we party. And then I was like I'm an alcoholic, like I have a serious problem.
It's such a weird tightrope that's walked there, because like you said, on one hand you're looking at yourself saying, shit, I'm not achieving what I want to achieve, what's going on? But then on the other hand, you're like, well, when I go out, I'm the life of the party and I have a great time, and it's at
least I'm having fun for myself.
I think I'm having
right
fun. That's true.
And that's the thing though too, is that like when you have moments of when it gets real bad, you reflect and you're like, this is real bad. I need to do something. And then something comes along, no matter what drug you're using, something comes along and you're just kind of like, it's not as bad. Like, and then you have a period of time where you're kind of chipping away and everything's all right. And then something really bad happens again. And you're like, dude, I need to get out of this, you know, but it's scary.
Do you think that there's value in people who are trying to get over an addiction to think about those bad times more, and to, I don't want to say dwell on them, because that kind of has a little negative connotation, but to remind themselves regularly that what they're coming from, or do you kind of encourage people to stay more present in the moment and not necessarily consider all their mistakes so heavily?
I think it's kind of like a thing, like they'll tell you, you know, one of the common things in treatment is like play the tape through, right? So it's like when you start feeling impulsive and you want to like go do something, say you're in recovery, right? You're a few days in, a couple weeks in, 30 days in, whatever. They say play the tape through, meaning follow the path of like how the dominoes are going to fall, how this is going to progress, right? And you can look back at your past experiences and go, this is not going to end well for me because of all the bad things that have happened in the past, right? I don't think dwelling too hard in the past, like that's a space where there's a lot of like shame and bad beliefs about yourself and all of that. It's like, okay, I did these things. This is who I was. I have an opportunity to move forward and change the rest from here on out, right? I made some mistakes. And I mean, that's why it's helpful to look at like family systems and other things and go like, this isn't me. This isn't a solo product of me being a shitty person. I was doing what I needed to do, or I learned these coping mechanisms, and this is how I survived, and it led me down a really bad path, and maybe I did some shameful bad things, but I have an opportunity now to move forward and do something different, you know? But I think people will tell you who struggled with addiction, there's a amnesia or something that goes with it where it's real easy to forget how bad it was. Like people could be like living on a mattress somewhere, shooting dope, hating life, and they get like 30 days clean and they're like, it wasn't that bad, you know?
Yeah.
But you're like, dude, you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, and you were like scrounging out of people's cars, and you know.
That's where having someone like you probably comes in handy, someone that can help you stay focused and goal oriented.
Yep. I think like that's, as I work with more and more people and as I look at my life, what happens is people start to move forward into the unknown as they're doing this process, and it's not happening quick enough, or change isn't coming, or they're not, like people think that they get sober and like their families are going to immediately like love them again, or like be accepting, or they're going to make $100,000 a year all of a sudden. It's like, why isn't this happening? And then they run back to what they know, right? Because it provides some comfort, even though they know that it's not the best thing. But then like, so like, I think my job is to sit with them in those periods of discomfort when they want to make impulsive decisions and go like, I'm running that way, or I'm going this, like, and just go, just keep going forward. Everything's going to line up. Like nothing bad is going to come out of you making this good change in your life. It feels bad. It's really scary. But like, if you just figure out a way to continue moving forward, good things are going to happen, you know, just might not happen tomorrow. So yeah, I guess I don't really like sit with people too often like you're asking to and just be like, let's talk about all the shitty things you've done, you know, or like it's going to lead people to, but there's an accountability in it, and looking at it and processing the grief or the shame around the stuff that you've done, you know, and being like, dude, I do not want to go there again.
It's almost like you have to go into a mode where you're like a patron watching a movie, and you're just kind of looking at the events and saying, is this something that I want to be part of my life or not? And, you know, there's going to be shame attached with that. But for me, whenever I was getting over my shit, you know, it was helpful to try to take the shame out of as much as possible and just look at it. Okay, is this a decision that the person I want to be would make or not? You know, don't feel bad about it or whatever. Just, is that yes or no? Is that a decision that aligns with who you want to be?
Yeah.
And so that was something that was super helpful for me, for sure.
Right. I think like you say, like the way you're describing it is like being a patron, you know, watching a movie or whatever. And that's like the looking at something objectively, you know what I mean? You're just looking at the facts of the situation and not putting a judgment on it, and not being like, this was bad what I did, or this made me a bad person. It was just like, I did a thing. I was a part of whatever, right? You're looking at it from just a fact oriented place, and you're going, these were the events of your life. And then like you're saying, like moving forward, do I want those things to still be a part of my life? Do I want to make changes? I think everything in life is like a learning lesson, right? So the worst things that have ever happened in my life, if I am able to be accountable and sit there and objectively look at them and go, what could I learn from this thing that happened, and then apply it moving forward? Great. Yeah. Like that's how life works. But if you don't ever want to look at the stuff that you've done and you're just constantly running from it because you can't fail, you can't make mistakes, you can't be embarrassed, like, you know what I mean? You're never going to learn the lessons, and they're just going to keep coming back.
Right. Yeah, that's true. They just keep rearing its head until you're like, okay, I get it.
Right.
I see what's going on.
There's another counselor that we worked with who's kind of like, people would call him like a shaman and stuff. Like in a spiritual sense, he would talk about like your lessons in life. Like the universe's job is to present you with lessons for you to kind of like actualize and grow as a person on this planet, in this realm, right? And then you get to move on to whatever's next. But like here, your job is just your own individual thing, and you're going to get presented lessons. And the lessons are going to keep coming harder and harder and harder until you actually go, oh shit, like there's my lesson. So my lesson is like, don't drink anymore. It's bad for you. Like I could keep fighting that for the rest of my life, and just like, or I could keep seeing that like every scar I have and every injury and every bad relationship and everything was a result of this thing. So maybe I got to figure out how to live life without this thing and then continue moving forward, you know? And the lessons come in all different. It's not just drinking. It's like you're yelling at your girlfriend. Well, are you willing to sit and look at why you do that and where that comes from? Or do you want to just keep going into relationship after relationship where you blow up and get jealous and freak out? Mm-hmm. Or you want to like look at your stuff and grow as a person?
I think that all comes back to mindfulness too, and just being aware of those kind of moments and how they make you feel, to look at your action and, you know, taking that time to reflect in the moment.
I think like that, like you said it, that awareness is like the key to everything. I think if you, because everybody's just doing what they're doing until you go, this is hurting someone or this is hurting me or what, like it, but if you don't have that awareness or that wherewithal to have some reflection on it and that mindfulness around it, then you're never going to change it. Mm-hmm. But then the process of changing isn't like an overnight, like you're like, now I have to do the work. But yeah, everything like, that's what I was saying before, like everything starts with the mindfulness. And I think I just went up to Balboa Park and was like sitting in a spot where for like 2 years I went and meditated consistently. Cool. In between the bells. And I tell people all the time, like just doing 15 minutes a day was like a thing. It changed my life. Yeah. Chaotic things can be happening in my life. And like, I still have a semblance of being able to be like, I'm not going to think about all that craziness right now. And when it happens, I'll deal with it, you know, but usually my brain creates the worst case scenario and they don't usually come true. So
rarely. The brain has a good way of prepping you for the worst, for sure. And yeah, I've noticed I've been doing meditations, trying to every day since November-ish, I think. But yeah, one of the things I've noticed in the weeks, you know, recently is, like you said, being able to tap into that in moments outside of meditation and being like, okay, I'm in traffic. I'm getting really worked up, you know, right. I need what's going on. And then you know, it becomes almost a skill you have where it's like, okay, I can just tap into this real quick and I'll be better.
Yep. Like that's it. Exactly what you described. Because it's like without the mindfulness, without the ability to pay attention to your emotions or your sensations or your thoughts or whatever's going on, everything's just kind of like robotically happening, right? Mm-hmm. So you're in traffic and you're that asshole that's like in between every red light, you're like flooring it and then you get to the red light and like you're there at the same time as everybody else, but you're just like in your car, in your body, you're all revved up and like, if I behave in this way, it's going to make a better outcome, you know? And then you just continue to like get to the light of the same. But if you're able to be like, okay, the only thing I can do in this moment is control, you know, I'm worried about being late right now. So what's going to happen? I just going to go with the flow and I'm going to calm myself and, you know, but otherwise, if you didn't have the ability to reflect and think about, dude, you're getting slightly dysregulated right now. You just continue to drive like an asshole and like, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy how worked up I get driving and just, being able to tap into that is such a game changer.
Yeah. That's my thing. It's like so hard for me. I just was telling my girlfriend this recently that I'm like a super compassionate, accepting person in all areas of my life. It's what I do for a living. Like I really wholeheartedly like embody this, I think. But then when I drive, like everyone's a fucking idiot. And I'm just always like if somebody's like going a little too slow, I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like, So my like new work that I'm trying lately is to like stop that knee jerk reaction where I just like spat. Like I just want to be able to have that mindful space where I'm like, one, I'm not in any major hurry. Why do I need to snap at this person in front of me, you know? And two, they could be dealing with something that I don't know about, or the reason that person just cut me off is they're on their way to the hospital, their pregnant wife's in the back, you know? Yeah. But I'm just like, you inconvenienced me, motherfucker.
Yeah, for sure. It's already been hour and 10 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Good conversation.
Bye. So you accept new clients regularly? Like right now, people are feeling like they want to talk to you. They can reach out to you.
Yeah, I have my website is www.comingintofocus.org. And so there's like a link you can send things on there. I have an Instagram that's the same thing, Coming Into Focus, just like all one word, which I try to like update things. But right now, Fridays and Saturdays, I have availability. I'm pretty open. I see clients all day, like on those 2 days right now, or those are the 2 days that I have the availability. So, and And I deal with like a wide range of a bunch of other stuff, like anxiety. I work with a lot of teens around like just school anxiety and pressure to perform and all that stuff. The addiction piece is obviously something that I have like a lot of personal experience, but like it all came from anxiety and depression and other things too, you know? So,
right.
Yeah, I am, anybody, I would just encourage, like, it's super hard to make that step. Like, I think you've said like you've been in your own therapy or whatever, and like
still going. Calling
up and finding a therapist for the first time or admitting that you need some help with something or whatever, it's like super scary usually, you know? And it's just like, pick up the phone, do it. It'll alleviate a lot of that anxiety, you know? I'm always with people where it's like, if they email me and I don't feel like I'm the right fit, I'm going to help you find the right fit.
Right.
Because I think I have on my Psychology Today profile, like, I want people to learn to feel comfortable in their own skin and know that they have the ability to create that in their life. And so if I'm not the one that's going to help you do that, I'm going to help you find the person that is, you know? So yeah.
Cool.
If you're thinking about it, call. Why prolong eventually it's going to lead there, you know? If you've been thinking about it this long, everybody's got an intuition that's telling them, you know, and you're just like ignoring it and just get the process started.
Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, man. We'll have to maybe do this again.
For sure, man. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.